Welcome everybody to the Connective podcast. I welcome my first guest in this series, Julie Hammond. Julie Hammond is a mother, a grandmother of 3. She is the author of the Pelvic Diaphragm, and she has also created a workshop accompanying this book. She is the director of Anatomy Trains and also a senior teacher for Anatomy Trains. Welcome, Julie. You are the beginning of this Connective podcast journey because you were my beginning of my journey with structure integration, and you obviously have inspired my life. You have been my mentor, my teacher, my inspiration when it comes to having a vision, because you are a natural visionary. I have seen you bringing so many things to life, from workshops to conferences to congresses, and your own book now. And you have also just graduated university. So many things, whilst being also a family person and have a big heart, and you're leading the team of Anatomy Trains with a big heart. You're also contributing to the education creation of Anatomy Trains International. There's so many things you do.
That was a lot. Thank you for having me, by the way. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. I'm very excited for you doing this as well. It's so cool to see. When I listen to what I've done, I'm like, oh, no wonder I get tired.
Yes. And you saying now, no wonder I get tired. This is something also I learned from you, is to respect and to honor my womanhood. And I think this is something you speak a lot about, and oftentimes in trainings we forget to highlight the female body, the differences of the female body. And that leads me also to my first question, to your absolutely incredible book. I have planned for weeks now to make a post about this, but I don't know where to start, because I must say this is a very, first of all, I can hear you talking to me in this book. It has wonderful illustrations, a lot of photos, and you also have a conversation with the reader. So you ask us constantly to tune into ourselves, to ask ourselves how this impacts our life, or how some things express themselves in our lives related to any chapter we are in. So it's almost like an interactive journey reading this book. It's absolutely fantastic.
I love that you can hear my voice, because someone else has said that as well. And I really wanted that to come across. So,
yeah. It's your voice. And I think in the time of AI, where the voices get diluted and people start to sound similar, as a teacher, I think this is the most valuable asset we can contain, is our own voice, of way of saying things. And for your book, my question would be, what kept showing up in the bodies and the people you work with that made you feel this book had to be written?
So my book was written out of many factors. So my book was written out of, I'm going to go around the houses here, but
yeah, feel
my
free.
book was written out of my love of the anatomy and also my clinical experience. So there was a lot of factors that led to me deciding to write the book. And when I opened my first clinic in the UK, I was 30. And I had a lot of women coming to see me with pelvic pain. And the women were all of a certain age. They were the age that I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I couldn't understand it. I was like, why am I getting so many women of a certain age coming to me with pelvis problems? Now, having been through menopause, I completely understand it.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction to Tom, because I went to Dublin and did Tom's pelvis workshop in 2004. And that started me with the love of the anatomy and also reciprocal relationships of the anatomy, especially the pelvis, because nothing works in isolation. And then I did a dissection project. I did a fresh tissue dissection in Arizona. And it was the abdominal thoracolumbar fascia into the pelvis. And that for me was the amazing, beautiful anatomy of the pelvis. but also how much fed into that and affected it, and how the integrity of the pelvis relied on all of these other structures.
Yeah.
You know, you look at this complex, intricate pelvic diaphragm, but there's a lot more complex around it. So it made me realize we can't just keep blaming this one little area for a problem. And it works really hard. So having the history in the UK, the dissection, and then my clinical practice, I was getting a lot of women at the time who were having internal pelvic floor work. And they'd have the work done, but they felt like it exacerbated the problem, that everything tightened up more. And I would look at their global structure and think there was restriction in the feet. They didn't have support of their feet. There was compression above. There was lack of respiratory diaphragm movement. So there was a lot of other factors. And I realized that until all of them things were looked at, why would we go to the pelvic diaphragm? Why would we go in and ask a structure to let go that's holding on for a reason? So for me, it's always the why. Why is it holding on? What does it need? Why is it overworking? So I feel it's really important to be clear that I feel pelvic health physio is important. Internal pelvic work is important. But the structure has to be at a place where it can let go safely.
Yeah.
And I was noticing that more and more, and then playing with that global view of treating the pelvic diaphragm and getting good results. And then I realized I need to write this down. It needs to, so that was the reason.
Yeah. And I remember when you started working on this, and I saw you moving into a room and the door closed all the time, and there were books and papers everywhere, and you just, the doors open and the door closed again. It was just, there was an energy around it for sure. And it's such a, it's so lovely that now you can look back to your work such a long time ago and can see, wow, this is now how important that is. All these women came to me and worked and tried to have help. And I was one of the practitioners who didn't understand how I actually can help. Now, you went to the dissection that really opened your eyes. And I know you went to this dissection with a lot of anatomy knowledge, fascial anatomy knowledge. You knew the connections, but then you saw it on a cadaver. Yeah. Why has that changed your perspective so much, or what was it that changed it?
I think you know the connections. You know the theory of the connections, but especially with fresh tissue, the reality and being able to move body parts, and seeing that communication. So, for example, I love the connection between the larynx, the heart, and the respiratory diaphragm down to the pelvic diaphragm. That's like one of my favorite pieces. Being able to, in a dissection, dissect that connection. We maintained the respiratory diaphragm within the thoracic cavity, but we moved the tongue, the larynx. And then being able to move the larynx and the tongue and seeing the pull on the respiratory diaphragm and then into the abdominals, that's the body, that's the reality. And it absolutely blew my mind. I was like just a kid in a candy shop. I was so excited. Everybody had to look at this. I was like, come and look at this. But I'd also bought the larynx chapter. So I'd done all the theory, but to see it was like, wow. Yeah. That's amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can, and I know a lot of movement teachers know that after they have taught a class, and I know this also from my body work, people tend to have a deeper voice, a softer voice. They're almost an octave lower, and they're surprised about themselves because everything let go, their nervous system. You work the tissues, maybe in the inner thighs and the adductors, the abdominals, the neck, the back, the ribs, and everything flows a little bit better.
I think that is so, you hear it so many times, don't you? But like for me, the understanding of the anatomy side of that. So the hyoids move the larynx. And
Yeah.
we always talk about the hyoid muscles as moving the hyoid bone, or the hyoid bone is connected to the larynx.
Yeah.
So they're the extrinsic muscles of the larynx. So when the hyoid muscles are restricted, the vocal folds are restricted. But it doesn't mean they're restricted here. It means they could also be restricted further down. So adductors, respiratory diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm, we get a lack of movement in the throat, and the vocal folds can't go through their range.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to, imagine until you start to understand the anatomy and you go, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I see this in teachers and in myself as well. And my mother, I don't know why the voice of my mother stands so out for me. And I can notice this so much, that when she is nervous, she gets a higher pitch, and me too. And I can't get out of it unless I really relax and move my body. It feels like but it comes from my pelvic floor.
It comes from,
diaphragm
down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How do you feel that practitioners, movement teachers can benefit from the pelvic diaphragm workshop? I was so lucky to have assisted you in this workshop, and from the book, adding this to their tool belt.
So I feel like the book itself highlights collaboration. And that's one of my biggest things that's important to me. Like, I know what I do. I know what I do well, and I know what I don't do. And I don't want to do everything mediocre. I just want to be good at what I do and hand it over. So I feel like the book highlights how we all fit into the puzzle. It also highlights, one, the anatomy. I really hope I made it. I tried to make it so that it was complicated anatomy, but broken up enough so that you could get bite-sized pieces and not get overwhelmed. But you have to be able to understand the anatomy to be able to help someone and to be able to refer. Because if you can't communicate with another health professional, what happens? And I wrote the book with a clear plan in my head from a clinician's point of view. I wanted you to understand the anatomy, understand what you see in people showing up when it comes to posture, and then what would you do with that information? Because I love information. I'm an anatomy nerd. I love information. But sometimes it's like great information, but what do I do with it? And it's not, to me, you have to have stepping stones to what you would do with that information. So I hope that the book does all them things.
I feel it does. It definitely is. I feel you wrote it in a way that it's non-threatening. And when people read these little bite-sized information and you give them then first the reflection, the information, the application, it always integrates itself very naturally. And I don't think you have put too much into one chapter. You really chopped it down into little pieces, which I find so amazing about this book. And often, and I see this in movement teachers, yoga teachers, Pilates not so much, but general movement teachers, they have a little bit of fear of anatomy, or tend to be afraid to study it, or tend to forget it. And why do you think it's so important for people who work with humans to know their anatomy? And how could they approach it so it suits maybe their learning, or it's not scary to learn? How could they make this practical for them?
I think it's important. For me, I feel it's really important to have clear intention. And the only way you get clear intention is knowing your anatomy. It changes your touch. So if you're manual, your touch changes with intention. Otherwise, you're just hoping. I like to be specific. But also for movement, clear intention of what you're wanting to achieve. And if you don't understand the anatomy, you can't have that. And, anatomy can be overwhelming, but if you find your style of learning, so whether it's coloring in, for me, it was Play-Doh and a little model, putting the anatomy on. And the more you start to understand it, the more you can play with it and really understand that open chain, closed chain, distal, things can happen different, distal and proximal. But initially, you've just got to start. You've just got to understand the piece, and then you add to it. But I don't think, I feel like it's been made scary. It sometimes is scary with a language, but if you break it down, it's not. It's really not. Yeah. And you've also got to get passionate with an area. So maybe the feet. Love the feet first, then move on. Everything's keep it in compartments. But yeah, like anatomy is amazing.
And I feel with you, when I started training with you, I thought I know somewhat my anatomy, but I realized I don't know much. And, but you always made us students, when I trained under you, structure integration, and even later, as I was under your wings as an educator for anatomy trains, you always made me feel like where you're at is good. Go, like, trust that you can do this. And you gave me a safe space. I think that was the most important the important moment for my anatomy learning and my passion that grew more and more, and that I actually sat down and memorized and rewrote things and summarized. So I really wanted to get better and more specific with it. I think that's what it is. And learning in layers too. You know, you go from the more global anatomy and you get more and more detailed. And I love that you said, get passionate about one area, then you probably know then the ways how you learn your anatomy best, and you can put it in context and into your practice. So you have passed on structure integration into so many hands, including mine, and I'm so thankful for this. And you know, you can show it with your hands, and we were all watching you, and I'm still in love with watching you working. I still have, you know, your body movements and your eye, your pausing, your stepping back. It's all very vivid in my memory still. And you can demonstrate it also right on in front of your students learning structure integration. And still, even if a student does everything right and the tissue under their hands doesn't answer the way it does under yours. What is that? What is the part no one can really carry across?
Yeah, I feel like I've been working a lot more from a teaching point of view to try and change pieces. Because a lot of the time you look at it like that's a technique. This is the technique we do for that. But they're never techniques, are they? They can't be techniques. It's what's your intention, what's the anatomy, what's the person's tissue like on that day, what's your size. And whenever I touch someone, it's about listening to the tissue. So for me, it's like, how do I introduce myself with my hands? How do I listen to the tissue? And then what does the tissue want me to do? And as a student, that's really hard because you're just trying to do the technique. And I feel like when people go out into the world and practice, I hope, especially with the way I'm teaching now, that I give them permission to play more. So I've just been teaching part 3 in America, and the biggest piece for me was because I went in and did part 3.2. Tom was doing 3.3. Michael did 3.1. So they're getting different teachers. But for me, it was like, who are you in this process? What is your strength? What are your hands? Forget the technique. What do we want to do? Play with it, you know, because when you get out, it should be playful, curious, asking why. You shouldn't have to remember a technique. And I don't feel like in the early days I gave enough permission for that, whereas now it's clearer when I'm teaching, you know, you have to play. You don't be afraid to go rogue. Don't be afraid to not follow the recipe. Adapt to the recipe. Change it. It should be. It's just a guide. So I feel that's a piece that allows that to happen.
I love that. And that really comes then back to your intention. You do the body reading, you know what your intention is for this moment in the session, and you do whatever your tissues, the body gives you, and your hands allow you to do. You have taught in my generation, you already have taught us you already always said that we can use our hands as we like. And also, I remember I went up with one of the students and we came up with an idea. We were both movement teachers, and you was like, yeah, show us the idea. Oh, you can do this also standing. So giving the students options of exploring a technique in a different way. It was definitely already there.
Nice.
And then I have seen this evolving as I was assisting you in courses. Now, so much teaching is now moving onto screens, especially theoretical teaching and also the dissections, for example, which I'm a big fan of. But what do you think a student can only get from being in the room with your hands on a body?
I feel like you can watch a technique, and I've taught online, I've shown techniques, and you can watch a technique, but you don't know what it should feel like.
Yeah.
You don't know what the depth is. And you don't know the nuances depending on the person's tissue or problem or dysfunction. So in class, you get to understand what it should feel like. You get to understand the depth of it. We also do touch tests a lot. So I like to do touch tests because I like to feel a student's hands. And it's the safest place to get good constructive feedback. It's also really easy to say, oh, just drop in a bit more, soften, drop in a bit more. And then you've given another level of depth that once you've felt it, you can't unfeel it. So for me, it's the best way I can guide someone through their touch. And you cannot do that online. It's impossible. Yeah.
No, it's true. Yeah, that is true. It just brought me back to the moment where I did a touch test on you and I did your suboccipitals and I had to do it twice, I think, or 3 times. And you always said to me, you can go a little bit deeper. You can go deeper, another deeper, really? And I would have never gotten this feedback if I would have learned this from a video.
Yeah, and you don't know. Who do you get feedback from when you're in your clinic?
Yeah.
So
that is true. That is very true too. So, and these days, any student can ask AI for any anatomical fact in seconds. Why do you think it's still matters? And we touched on this at the beginning, that you have to learn anatomy yourself, including memorizing and knowing it in your hands.
I mean, I absolutely love ChatGPT. I've been really enjoying playing with it. So for facts, and even that, it's not always correct. You kind of go, that's not right.
I can see you getting into arguments with AI, Julie.
But, from the anatomy, when you touch someone, you have to know what you're touching. But you also, not just the muscle or fascia, you have to know what's around it. And if you don't, I mean, why make everything hard? Again, it's back to that. Let's just touch everything and hope, or let's be specific and really be effective. And, I talk about it a lot, that I feel like practitioners overwork. We overtreat, with the best intention. We want to help people. We want to do as much as possible, and we do too much. The body can't cope, and then the changes you've made, it doesn't know how to organize it, so it will go back to its pattern. Understanding your anatomy gives you clear intention. Clear intention changes your touch or your movement, because you're very clear. And I had a client in last week, and she gave me 3 different everyday movements that were causing her a problem. And she was really good. It was great communication. And just that communication, I knew exactly where to go, because I understand the anatomy and I understood the problem. I don't want to have to be working too hard. I'm 56. I've been doing this for 26 years. I need to be effective. And that for me is knowing your anatomy. And I love the other side. So I love the anatomy side, but I also love that touch where the body tells you what it wants you to do. But you have to have both.
Yeah. When do you think people tend to overwork? Is it just because they don't know their anatomy, or when they not immediately get a result, or?
It's a mixture. I feel like sometimes if you don't know your anatomy, you're hitting a lot of areas to try and get the results. Also, you're looking for results without allowing the body to go away and actually process what's happened, because that's another thing. And I think people feel like if someone's paying for an hour of their time, they have to touch the person for an hour. And that's not right. You're doing, it's not your time, it's what your service you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And once you've done that, you don't need to keep touching. Because then you just take away what you've given them. And that comes down to boundaries and confidence. And that's a hard one to learn, for people that want to help. It's a hard one to learn, but it's also important.
And I also feel this sounds quite revolutionary, because clients expect they're paying for 1 hour and they need to learn, and you need to educate them. You're paying for a service, not for the time you're spending with me. Yeah. And as you said, it comes with confidence, and you can only become confident if you have a specific goal and the outcomes or not, and then the reflection of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So fascia is obviously a ever progressing field, sometimes very overwhelming and confusing, especially for people who like to, absorb a lot of information, and then you jump into the world of social media and you have very viral posts about fascia. And when you're more the humble, quiet fascia learner, you learn that oftentimes these posts are a big hype and they're not quite correct. And what do you want to say? So is there something? So first of all, I want to know, how would you suggest people to navigate the world of fascia that may be overwhelming? There's so much information. How can you keep up without getting lost in the information that may be also changing with time?
I mean, I love the fact that it's constantly changing. We need it to constantly change. We're just updating, it's just updating on what came before. We're getting more information, we're understanding more and learning the importance of it more, which is amazing. However, I personally really struggle with the word fascia being used in everything. It's everywhere. It's in everything. And I'm watching, I've really had to be careful and avoid social media because it overwhelms me and it stresses me so much. And I'm watching someone do something for the pelvic floor. So a fascia exercise for the pelvic floor. And I'm like, it's an exercise. Just an exercise. You're hitting everything. You have to, So I really struggle because I love the information about fascia. I love the fascial origami, but I'm very aware when I'm working with someone, I'm working with fascia, muscles, the nervous system, emotions, what's their lifestyle, what's their movement, what's their body awareness, how do they relate to their body? So it's really hard to watch things and not react. So I have been avoiding it for that reason. Yeah. It's too much.
Do you base your information, or if you have, for example, your students and you say to them, okay, you are exposed to a lot of social media trends as well. Would you suggest them to go maybe into a certain corner to learn their anatomy, their fascia information?
I mean, the Fascia Research Society is amazing. There's so much information there. And there's places to get good information.
Yeah.
And you have to just be careful. I do talk about our wording and promoting and advertising and just being careful with what you're stating. I don't actually probably put anything about fascia or specific fascial names, when I'm looking at the origami, the transversalis fascia. But I'm very careful because a lot of the time it's not what they think it is not doing what they think it is. And there is some good sources out there. And I feel it's a shame because what happens is you get this extreme of what fascia does, and then you get the against it. And it's such a shame because there's some great, great information. But we're always working with a unique human being. Everything. I can't not be working with a whole person. I just do it through fascial work.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love this also in your book, I must say, because every information you put in there, you have a reference to where to find it. So it's a very well researched book. I feel it's so good.
That was really important for me, and the research side. Yeah.
And it teaches the reader as well to check their information sources. For someone right at the beginning of learning to read and treat a living body, what do you wish you could give them on day one, and what can only come with time?
This is a great question, by the way. And for me, it's touch. And it's probably the most annoying answer I could give. Your touch constantly adapts. Yeah, so you have to learn with your touch, and it comes with confidence to listen to the body, to go at the speed the body wants, to adapt your touch depending on structure, depth of fascia, depth of the layer you want to get into, the person's nervous system. So there's a lot of factors just for that one touch. And, we touched in it earlier about watching me work and passing it on. And I spend so much time setting up a movement that the movement doesn't actually take that long, but the setup does, because I need to make sure I've taken my time and I'm exactly where I want to be. And I remember, obviously, I mentor students and I get asked questions, and my normal answer is touch 100 people. You have to touch 100 bodies. You have to have a catalog of it in your head, in your hands. And you can start and you think you have good touch, and then 6 months later you realize your touch has changed, and then a year later you realize your touch has changed again, and you realize maybe your touch wasn't what you thought it was at the beginning. And that's common because it's constantly adapting. And you cannot give that. I would love to be able to, but that just comes with experience and lots of bodies. So that's a great question.
Yeah, thank you. And it reminded me of the Fascia Congress in Berlin in 2018 it was. And there was a competition where you had to blindly touch. And I think the winner was one of the eldest women and practitioners participating in the conference, Rolfa. And so obviously it very confirms your answer. Now, a question I will ask everyone in the Connective podcast interviews is, what has fascia helped you to connect that once felt separate?
I feel like this is a really easy answer for me because I wrote a book on it. So as simple as the 4 layers of the pelvic diaphragm, that's one of the pieces, and the connection through from the perineum to the endopelvic fascia amazes me, and they all communicate with each other and has to. But then that connection into the respiratory diaphragm, we have the amazing fascial connection. It takes us back up to the larynx, which I love. So that for me is easy because structures that I looked at separately, I can never look at separately again. And you cannot look at a pelvis and not look at the breath. You can't look at the breath and not look at the pelvis. And then also at the top, the seal, the vocal folds, the glottis, like the pressure system. I can't look at them in isolation at all. So this was like, that's my book. That's, that's what it gave me. I also want to look at that question a slightly different way, because I feel like we could look at it the opposite. Because the more we learn about fascia, I feel like the more disconnected industries are.
Yeah.
So for me, the fascia connects and it gives that communication, but then we've also got this disconnection in communication between different health professionals, different industries. And another reason why I avoid social media is because I can't cope with the arguments. I can't cope with the whose idea is better, whose method's better, everybody. So I think of Tom in 2001, the information he gave and how it's been built on.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we know, the more we build on it. But it brought that language into a broader community. I've just been in Maine with him and I was in his library and I looked at his shelf of anatomy training books in different languages. I'm like, that is amazing. I think there's 19 different languages. It's like amazing. And I feel like we're trying to get people to listen to their bodies. We're trying to get them to integrate and understand their bodies. And yet we have this community that can't integrate.
Yeah.
And it upsets me. Like sometimes I feel like I just want to walk away because I can't cope with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
We're all just trying to do what we do, and what we do, it doesn't matter whether you're movement, manual, we're just trying to help people understand their bodies, have trust in their bodies, because that's what it is, isn't it? We give them the trust. We can't fix anything. We just give trust. We give them permission to listen and more body awareness. And yeah, if we could only just do that as an industry as well, it would be great.
Yes. And I love you addressing this because that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast. I want to bring the voices together, not just looking at their method or their way of teaching, but rather as what brought them to include fascia into their thinking. And looking at what connects us in these conversations of bringing people back to home to themselves, to trust themselves, to remember how to move, to remember how to feel themselves. And that not only within the fascial world, where I can still feel like we have, as a community of people with fascia tin hats on, which are not tin hats, which are very evidence-based books, really. What we have communal is that fascia research always changes. It's evolving. That means that we have to change. We have to change old perspectives, something that we may have taught, and we are open to say, yes, I said this yesterday, but today it's different. We are careful in how we word things. We are not 100% saying, not all of us saying 100%, this is the only one how you can train or how you can manipulate or how you can work with fascia. I think that's what we have hopefully in common. That's what I saw that was different. But now as the fascia community, to explain to people who are not part of them, the people that upset me too online are for example, evidence-based exercise physiologists or evidence-based physiotherapists who say fascia, that is all not true. You can't, you can't affect the voice with treating the ribs or pelvis or diaphragm. These are understanding that, hey, you may be stuck in a way of looking at the body, even though it's evidence-based, but there's other ways that are evolving now. There's other voices, and we can all be respectful to each other and support each other in what you do is correct. It's great. And I explain it that way and you explain it this way.
Just trying to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Different lens.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Julie, so thank you so much for this conversation. This was such a beautiful journey. Also for me, through my own training in the background when you were talking, I was in the room back with you. And I would like to know, where can we find you? What are your upcoming projects? I'm just going to hold this book.
I was in a classroom in America and everybody had a book, and some of them were highlighted and had tags on, and it was the weirdest feeling ever. And, not just that they had my book, that they were going through it and marking it was pretty cool. Anatomy Trains Australia is my website, along with my Julie Hammond website. So either you can find me. The good news is my Anatomy Trains Australia website is in the process of being updated, so it's more user friendly because it's been so confusing. I have a summer school in February that's just about to be launched. So you are the first to hear really about it.
Exciting.
It will be launched in the next couple of weeks. So I have a summer school, starts on the 16th of February, goes till the 1st of March. And I have Tom Myers coming across. Melanie Burns is going to be teaching polyvagal.
That is exciting.
Wojtek is coming back, and Gary Ward's coming to do his Close-Chain Biomechanics and his flow method, which I'm very excited about. And I'm also running a grad day. So for all the ATSE grads over the years, we're having a grad day with speakers, and just a way of having great conversations and, checking in on everybody. So that will be launched in the next couple of weeks. So that's my next big project, apart from the fact I'm heading to Norway, Switzerland.
Exciting. I am excited for the summer school. I will be there with my microphone, hoping to get some voices as well.
That'd be lovely.
Yes, that would be lovely. That is so exciting, especially getting this lineup of people together. You are definitely a master of, with the conferences you had during COVID as well. The women's what was it called? The Women's Congress. That was so beautiful. And everything that you have created.
For someone who needs to be online, I feel like that was pretty impressive.
That were really good. Okay, Julie, thank you so much. The first interview in the Connective. If you guys have any questions to Julie, please contact her. All her information, as well as the information about the summer school, will be in the show notes. And I'll hear you and see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Julie.